I know. You've heard this before. It's not a new question, but the answer is always evolving. So we can't stop asking. What's your why? I am your host, Emmy DeGrappa. What's Your Why is brought to you by Wyoming Humanities. This show explores the human experience with nationally and internationally renowned humanists, authors, journalists, philosophers, artists, and scientists, and many more. We adventure into conversations about where they've been, what makes them tick, and how their history relates to the greater world and to you. And today, my special guest is Zeahlot Lopez. Zeahlot, an international speaker, mentor, and author, has dedicated over a decade to empowering women. A first-generation Mexican-American with a master's in counseling psychology and an advanced leadership studies from USC. She founded multiple businesses and mentored hundreds globally. As CEO of Business and Pleasure, Inc., Zeahlot has transformed countless lives, particularly for culturally diverse and first-generation women. And I'm so excited to welcome her here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Emmy, for this opportunity. I'm very, very excited.
I have so many questions. I hope we can get through all of them. But where did you originally grow up? And when you say you're a second generation Mexican American, that means that your parents were born here or they were born in Mexico. You're first generation.
I'm first generation, yeah. Both my parents were both born in Mexico. My dad came over the border with $5 in a dream when he was 19, and my mom was brought over when she was 12, not by her will. So both of them had to learn English and go through the whole process. And then they had me and my sisters, and then we had to learn the whole navigating both cultures and both worlds.
Oh my gosh. And that's such an interesting journey in and of itself. And I think that's probably why you relate so well to first generation Latinas in this country and actually globally who are starting businesses because they have to navigate two different worlds.
100%. And I feel for women, not only that are just first generation, but just the first to do anything, the first to say, no, I won't. The first to say, Mom, I'm not going to marry that person just because they said down the street is better. You're a first generation of many things. And for a long time, I thought it was just cultural, but then I woke up to a new world. Many times, I was finding myself in spaces that were just male dominated, beautiful lessons. And at the same time, I looked around to be like, where are my sisters? Where are the women here? Then I found myself being the first generation of women that understand female is the future.
Was it just taken for granted that you would go to college or how did your parents inspire you to go and get a higher education?
It's so funny you asked that, Emmy. This one really makes me laugh. They didn't. You know what really inspired me? When we were little kids, my sisters and I, my parents would send us to Mexico on our own with our grandparents and our aunties and uncles. Let me tell you, different worlds. There is no such thing as you turn on the hot water and it just comes out. You have to wake up at the crack of dawn, 5 a.m., go get some wood, build a fire, warm up the water, and then mix it just to take a bath. And early on, seeing that in my childhood, it imprinted in me, do not take things for granted. We'd come on back after our summer break, and then my dad would be like, so what'd you learn? And that instilled in me not only a good work ethic, but also understand that things are just so generous in the United States. Whether someone believes or agrees that United States is the best place to be in the world is not up to me. But what I do understand, and I'm very, very grateful for, it is indeed the land of opportunity. And that's what's helped me understand that I get to lead myself, she who leads herself in understanding, do we want better for the next generation? How can I wake up every day, give with my God-given gifts to everybody else around me, but say, do I want better? Do I want to show other people that more is possible given what we have here?
Well, I think that message needs to be something you wake up with in the morning, a message of gratitude, because it's so easy to forget how much we have. Mm-hmm. And I know just coming from a big family, big Hispanic family, and, dad was in education. Education wasn't great in terms of, you weren't going to get rich. Mm-hmm. And running the migrant program. And really, they were really part of this whole community of migrants who actually were stuck in that cycle where they had to leave their life in order to get an education. Because by the time you're 12, when you're a migrant, you're going to be working in the fields. And it's very difficult to leave that continuous cycle. And I see that people get into cycles. And so that's why, how do you help people break those cyclical patterns that they get into?
Oh, I love that question. And I love this because I practiced as a psychotherapist for almost a decade. And they put you in different scenarios. Sometimes you go to the hospital, sometimes you work in foster care, and so on and so forth. And you have to do your hours in certain categories with different individuals. And so they're like, hey, Z, do you want a couple 300 hours with AA? And I'm like, sure, let's go. So I went and I learned the most beautiful lesson. And this answers the question so well. You can only change what you are aware of and then have the will to actually change it. They literally say it in AA. Right? May I have the courage and the strength to change what I know I need to change, and it's with God's will. And so my answer to that very plainly is you can break the cycles, but only with the awareness and the insight. And the way the world works is you're going to change through two means. Either you change through love or you change through pain. It's your choice, right? And then so for me, I learned through both. I learned through painful experiences of my own human experience, but also seeing my family, aunties that wouldn't leave marriages or sacred unions that were hurtful, physically, emotionally, sexually, uncles that wouldn't want better for their life because they said, hey, well, my dad didn't do better. I don't need to either. And so in having that insight and saying, I can have compassion and empathy for them, but I do want better. And so Gandhi said it best. If you want to see change in the world, you got to start with yourself. You got to be that change. And that stuck with me. And I said, okay, I need to be the one that leads myself.
So why did you decide psychology?
Oh, my family gifted me that because many cycles were not healed. Many cycle and loops just continued. And I think very early on, I was parentified. I was just given a lot of responsibilities, including my little sister, including caring for our well-being, our daily routines, our homework, for me to say, could there be something different here? And with that introspection very early on, I had it deep within my soul. I've said it many times, but I have an old soul. And my soul speaks to me very often. When I was in my mother's stomach, when she was still pregnant with me, they told her to abort me because I was going to have Down syndrome. And so my parents, they went home very devout and they prayed about it and they kept me. And because of that, my mom added an H to my name from Zealot to Zealot with an H for hope. And so I share that because very, very often in my life, I've had great conversations with God. And God has spoken to me and God tells me, hey, there is more out there. Believe in this and you can continue and you can complete whatever it is you put your mindset to. Healing starts with awareness. Healing starts with saying, this is something I don't want to continue, and I can understand and have compassion for individuals that are still in the loop. So when I see them, whether it be with clients, whether I see them with friends or in business transactions, it's really a choice if we already have the awareness. Maya Angelou says, do what you can with what you know. But once you know better, you got to do better.
Oh, well, that's a really good one. And that leads me back to your woman empowerment, because I grew up in a very traditional family and my mom stayed at home and my dad, was he was a doctor in education. And it was interesting because dad really, during that time, his girls were going to get married and have children, traditional, and his boys were the ones that he was going to put, send them to college, send them to, and I ended up paying for we all did. We all paid for our own education, but it was just interesting, the encouragement that was given to the boys versus the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was perfectly acceptable for your daughters to be an executive assistant or, and not that dad was bad. That was just his own upbringing. Mm-hmm. And he felt like he was taking care of his daughters, that he was raising them to marry a really good man. And so it was a shock to me when I ended up getting divorced and I was going to finish my education, that's when I went to Cal State Long Beach. And I had my two girls, and they were going to go to school with me. They were going to graduate from college with me, and we were going to go to college together. And that's what we did. And so when I went back to school, I realized I have to break that pattern of thinking that this is what your job is. Your job is to be a wife and have children. And I bet you run into that quite a bit when you're dealing with the Latina culture.
Yeah, it's ingrained. I mean, I 100% can understand that. 100%. My mom went back to school actually in her 40s. So my mom, we were second marriage children. My mom wed very early on and she widowed very early on. Her first husband was in service. He was in the military and he passed in service. She waits 10 years, meets my dad, marries him, and then waits another 4 years to have me, another 2 years to have my sister. And so we watched her at night go to school so she'd become a school teacher. Then after that, she went for her master's and so on and so forth. And so we saw that trajectory, but there was one main difference. And this is very interesting how you and I align and we're very connected in this way. My parents didn't pay for a dime of college for me. They always believed that education is something that I would gift myself. And I said, great. At the time, I didn't understand it, but now full-fledged into my adulthood, I'm very thankful. It taught me the amount of effort it takes to get there. And so when I see the model I had at home of my mom and my dad, both being Mexican parents raising first generation children, I still see those dynamics. He would always tell her, it doesn't matter what you choose to do, Anna, but the food and the house and the kids still has to be all prep and clean and ready to go. Otherwise, you can't go do blank. And so she still, first and foremost, had the laundry, the house, and everything else to do. And there's this character cartoon that I saw recently. It's a line, it's a track, and it's men and women running, and they're all in the career advancement phase. But the women have the laundry, the dishes, and the children in front of them, and the men have nothing. And so has it really changed over the years? Not much. We'd like to think it has, but the mentality there is more of this is the responsibilities of women versus men. And what I'm seeing moving forward is that it just makes women stronger. So whether they want to participate in that moving forward, nothing wrong with it. But if they want to shift that, that's okay too. And that's the beauty of it. A lot of people will say that a feminist is someone that is all 100% for women and against men. I don't believe that. I think there's room for everybody. It's just how do we want to establish a family with partners that are conscious of these things and say, hey, I don't want to repeat what my mom and dad did. I want something different with you. Do you want that with me? Great, let's do it.
I think slowly it's changing. I see it stay the same in some places, but I do love that you want to break those ceilings and you want to break those limiting beliefs so that I think women want that change. They just don't know how to go about it. Maybe they don't even know that someone like you is out there for them, for example. Maybe they don't know that there's someone that can help them make a new decision. Because anytime you're stepping out of that comfort zone, that familiar, cycle you live in, it's scary.
Yeah.
And what kind of exercises or what would it be called? What kind of workshops and things that do you do that really open up someone's mind to help them make a different choice?
Emmy, I wish I could tell you that I have something that's just absolutely groundbreaking and new and innovative. And it's not. It's the most basic foundations that people skip. And the number one thing that has absolutely changed my life, transformation, and for everyone else around me that I lead, meditation. Meditation. It's first and foremost understanding the principle, may we lead with the relationship we build with ourselves. When that is healed and healed-ish in a good way, we can lead from a place of love versus a place of hurt and pain. And when we make better decisions for ourselves, the natural consequence is that everybody flourishes along with us, including our life, including our choices. We get to see things in slow motion and say, wait a minute, did I really want to respond versus react? Which one is it? And so it's nothing innovative. It's nothing life-changing, but the discipline to do it. That's the key. I mean, that's the key. I've been doing it for the past 12 years. I started with a grad school friend way back in grad school. He didn't complete it. I did until this day. Every single day, I set aside an hour and I just literally talk with Source, God, myself, and I'm like, what's going on? It's like a board meeting. It's so quiet. And it's the first voice I hear during the day. So that regardless of what I hear after that, I have first had my most important meeting. It's the discipline of continuing it. That's it. And in that discipline, you become the woman that has a good say do ratio. I said I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it because I am a woman of my word. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful. And discipline, isn't that an amazing word? Because
Sure is.
isn't that an amazing word? Because it's in all areas of your life, whether it is, like you said, making this great habit of meditating first thing when you wake up, to your eating habits, to whatever habits that you develop in your life is your discipline.
Yes.
I guess I've been studying it. I'm kind of like a health freak. And just learning about all the things that we eat and put in our bodies and how we take care of ourselves, those are all discipline things, because you have to want to discipline yourself to not have, let's say, chips in your house or just all the crap, all the stuff. And when you're at the grocery store, it's like, oh my gosh, things are calling my name. I'm going to walk by it. I'm not doing it. I'm going to go home. I'm going to make my homemade soup and my homemade bread, and I'm going to be good about it. I'm going to love it. And I'm going to enjoy it. But the more you do it, the more you realize this feels so good.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever heard the word diet used in a different context. And I was mind blown. I was like, what? A friend of mine actually said, oh, I'm going on a sound diet. And I was like, what's that? She said, for a whole month, 30 days, I'm not going to listen to anything. No radio, no podcast, no sound, no music. And I was like, oh my goodness, how delicious. She goes, honey, she goes, it's not just what I'm putting in my body. It's what I'm listening to, what I'm thinking, what I'm eating. My standards went up. So then not only do I go on juice cleanses, do I go on fast, do I go on meditation, 10 days sitting retreats, but now I think to myself, what am I feeding my mind? What am I ear hustling on? And it's so beautiful to know that a diet is not just what we ingest of food or nutrition, it's everything.
Well, and that goes back to, a whole life of a whole being. It's not just one thing. It is your mind, body, heart, soul. It's everything. And I can't say enough about, what you were saying, that you're not doing anything new, but that what you're doing is the wisdom of the ages.
In every culture.
In every culture. So that's what I love about your story, is that I love that you have taken what you've learned and learned how to pass it on and empower others. And what was that jumping off point that said, I'm going to do this? I'm going to create a business. Well, I love your business name, by the way, Business and Pleasure. Love that. What was that jumping off point that inspired you to know was your next step in your journey?
Thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate it. There's different places in my story of origin that are so important for people to know, but mainly it's so simple. It's funny. My sister, my older one, she got pregnant at 19. And so we were the littles. My sister and I were 15 years apart. And so my parents said, we're going to try something different with our two little ones. And so we grow up. And then when I got to high school age, they said, we're going to put you in an after school program so that you'll thrive, but that you keep good and no kids. And I was like, okay. I'm 16. So they signed me up for floral design because I love flowers and I still to this day love floral design. Teacher quits. And then they're like, well, you have to choose something next week. Otherwise we drop you. So I chose beauty school. I graduate from beauty school at 17 and I become the youngest cosmetologist in the state of California at 17. And I share this because that was my first career and it helped me pay for college. But then I realized, wait a minute, people aren't coming to me because I'm this great hairdresser doing cuts and color and all kinds of things with the hair, but it was the conversations. It was the intentive listening with intention. And then I realized I'm just an unpaid therapist. So then I went to psychotherapy school. 8, 10 years later, there I am. And then one day, light bulb moment goes off and I'm like, well, hot dang. I'm not a therapist for these people. I'm literally just a reparative experience for their mom and dad wounds. What the heck? People in business, they don't have business problems. They have mommy and daddy challenges that are unresolved. Each layer of my connection with self and source just gave me a new piece of the puzzle. And now I realize essentially, Emmy, it doesn't matter if people connect as friends, as business exchanges of energy, even in romantic relationships. All we're looking for is to know that we are loved, that we are whole, and that we're okay.
That's really interesting that everything was a stepping stone. And I love the part you said about being an unpaid therapist because my sister she's an esthetician, but she's a specialist. And she has a company called Skin Deep in Fort Collins, Colorado. And she's booked out all the time. She does beautiful work. Mariquita is her name. And so I have to give her a big shout out because she'll probably listen. But it's so true. She spends a lot of time on women's faces, but she probably knows their whole life story. And that is so true because they are so relaxed and she's taking care of them. And so they're just releasing.
They're receiving.
They're receiving too. But I think they're also releasing their whatever frustration they're feeling.
Yeah, they're in their most feminine. They're able to receive safely from someone that holds them, sees them, understands them. I always said when I was a makeup artist and I worked for MAC Cosmetics for years, I was like their top representative selling lipsticks left and right. But ultimately, it was the relationship I built with individuals. When someone understands that sales and marketing essentially is really just the relationship and the connection people feel, it's not selling, it's natural. Yeah, I call it in essence, it's the business of healing. That's all we're doing here as humans over and over and over each cycle. We're just in the business of healing here. Yeah.
Love that. Here our paths cross again. It's so amazing. You and I are sisters because I worked for Yves Saint Laurent and as their representative in Denver. And so I went around to all the stores and taught the women behind the counter how to wear a scent, what's in a scent, what it means, what it does, how it mixes with your natural oils, the whole thing, the whole explanation of why scents make you feel different ways. And you were doing the same thing. I'm sure we were doing it at different times, but I get that. I get that. Because what is so popular is scents, whether, aromatherapy, what the lavender or the peppermint or whatever the scent is, they all have certain healing properties. So I loved how you tied that back to healing. That we're in the business every day of healing ourselves.
Absolutely. And Emmy, let's go even deeper into that. As women, and let's just say in humans, men and women alike, we all have clairs, the abilities to sense, feel, see, hear, taste in different dimensions. And so I share that with you that because you were in your strongest power at that point, you understood that a woman can feel and sense even at deeper levels and connection with people through that smell. There's other people that do it, maybe chefs, they do it through taste, and other individuals like myself, I have clear cognizance. And so it's like movie scenes that just go across that I will see before things actually come into fruition. It's really interesting. Sometimes I'll meet people at the grocery store. I'm like, whoa, I'm feeling this. And they're like, wow. They're like, that's crazy. You felt that. And I was like, that's the antenna signal you gave me. Yeah. It's just going in deeper with ourselves so that we're able to distinguish, is this them or is this me? Where do I begin and where do they end?
Who has been your greatest inspiration and teacher to help you really recognize the gifts that you have and how you bring them out?
My greatest teacher has been the greatest comedian, God. We plan, God laughs. And aside from source, God, it's been the greats. I would say, even in my field as a retired psychotherapist, Brene Brown, right? The Power of Vulnerability, Don Miguel Ruiz with the Four Agreements. They're all spiritually, emotionally based leading voices in spaces where people are like, wow, that's so disruptive and that's so innovative. But really, I think they're saying the same thing, just with different phrases and different books and different platforms. Essentially, Emmy, I know that all the things I've ever been through is leading me to the same thing. In essence, at the end of my days, I have been a spiritual teacher. That's been my assignment. That's why I was brought into the vessel. That's why my mom's like, hey, I volunteer, I'll have her. And I'm like, cool. And that's why I'm here. It's to awaken new earth. It's to bring women into their power and to help them keep in their power. Not for me to tell them this is your power, it's for them to discover it. I'm a guide, I'm not the compass.
So that's interesting because that's really, I feel like, you've recognized a God-given journey and a spiritual path, and you accept it, and you're willing and putting yourself out there to impart it to other people. I think my biggest question is, are women finding you? How are they finding you? How are they experiencing your gifts? And how are you opening that door up for them?
I love that you asked that. Here's the funniest part that I find ironic because of so many years that I've, so to say, like studied business and then years and money and investment, time and energy into sales and marketing and operations. And the number one marketing tool is literally just the energy or the frequency I have. Here's what I believe. And it's so funny because I've heard this before, but when it's interesting that when you hear something doesn't mean you understood it. It's only recently, and I'm 37. When I was in my 30s, I heard, you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And I was like, wow. And then I was like, could that be true of romantic relationships? Could that be true of clients? Could that be true of friendships? All these things that we call in. And now I've understood the assignment and the lesson. My answer to your question is, we don't want to go and find the magnet. We've become the magnet. We are the magnet. Become and you attract, honey. Become the honey pot and the bees will come. And so now what I've understood very clearly is that when I am a woman of my word, when I am the woman that shows up scared and I still show up, and when I am that woman that is able to hit that new height because I have become it in the becoming process, I don't need to find the women. They just have a conversation and they're like, tell me more.
Well, that's one thing I love about women is that we like to talk to each other and we like to take care of each other. And I think it's really funny because I talk to my sister Mariquita quite a bit, or my sister Deborah, or I have another sister Loretta. So 3 sisters and 3 brothers, but always my sisters. And my husband says, "What do you guys talk about?" And I said, everything and nothing. You talk about everything and you just like put your arms each other and can talk about what you're making for dinner or how you feel about this or a book you're reading or, something that's bothering you, or just can be a myriad of things that you could like be on the phone for an hour and I'll be like, oh my God, I gotta go. I gotta go. So it's just, I love that about being a woman and being feminine and embracing that. I think for a while there, when it was the bring home the bacon and, the woman who could do it all, she wasn't embracing herself. She was just trying to be all the things that, like you were saying about your dad and how your mom had to take care of everything and also succeed. And we wanted to do all the stuff. But sometimes you got to take time and say, I don't need to stress out. I don't need to freak out. I don't have to do all this stuff. I need to like focus and take care of myself.
A sacred self-care.
And giving yourself permission to do that.
And that is the wise woman that is already inside you. And it took me so long, Emmy, to understand that, longer than it should have. I remember the first time that I had a man tell me, hey, did you know that you're already born with all the worthiness that you will ever have? You were born with it. I was taken back. I had never heard that before. And it wasn't until recently that I embodied that. And I was like, I am already worthy. I'm already chosen. I am already loved.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of unlearning.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're sharing this message and you're spreading it far and wide because you are a beautiful created being and God does love you.
Yes.
So that is so good and refreshing to hear. I love it. Love it. Love it. So tell me all the places that people can find you.
Oh my goodness. So I got really lucky and my mom chose my name, as I mentioned earlier. And fun fact, it's the only one in the world, the way it's spelled. And so if you type in my name on Google, okay, Zeahlot, every single platform, we have captured it. You'll find me Zeahlot, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Medium, Substack, the whole 9 yards. Very simple. The website, zeahlot.com. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very grateful to my mom because I didn't realize it until I got into the branding world, marketing. And they're like, do you know how hard that is? Just a first name, not a last name. I'm like, correct. I never add my last name because I've always known that I will one day be adding my partner, my husband's last name. And that'll change one day. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I will always have my first name.
Oh, that is so, so cool.
Yeah.
It's been so great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Emmy. I enjoyed it very much too.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Your Why? Brought to you by Wyoming Humanities with support from Wyoming Community Foundation and generous supporters like you. To learn more, go to thinkwhy.org, subscribe, and never miss a show.